What was happening inside the detention center, the prison there. A photo of Erik Menendez at the parole hearing today, if we could put that up, and tell you as well, there he is. He testified for several hours there today. Robert Kovacic live outside the Richard Donovan Correctional Facility. Robert, again, this decision coming down within the past 5 minutes. What are you hearing out there?
Yeah, Colleen and Michael, as we speak, I just want to let you both know that I have now forwarded you the material that is reportable. Ladies and gentlemen, we have been under rules and regulations that have not allowed us to share the information that was given to us throughout the day from a single pool reporter. But again, the hearing is over. It lasted 10 hours. And forgive me as I read from this, but Colleen and Michael, you can help me along here. The commissioner speaking, we certainly did not give this case short shrift. We probably spent 4 times more than we do on our usual average here. This is a tragic case. I agree that not only 2, but 4 people were lost in this family. That is what members of the relatives had said about this. And as we look this over, another thing to highlight here is the minimal denial is 3 years. So that means that Erik Menendez cannot go before a parole board again for 3 years. The commissioner going on, I'm reading here, Colleen and Michael, point out what you see as well. Erik's role in the second burglary was a factor. They went throughout this case and looked at the violations before the murders were committed, and then they looked at the murders themselves, and then they looked at the violations inside of prison, and they spent a lot of time with that. But I want to go right now, as you guys take a look at what was said, and look to the summations, and I'm going to ask our people back in Universal City to get ready with putting these words on the screen, because I think it is important. This was Erik Menendez's summation to the 2 parole commissioners done remotely. He said, and I'm quoting here, and we'll put this up so you can read along with me, "I just want my family to understand that I am so unimaginably sorry for what I have put them through August 20th, 1989 until this day and this hearing." Erik went on to say, and Colleen and Michael, I believe this is the very last thing he said, "Don't think it's the healing of me, it's the healing of the family. This is a family tragedy." However, you did have LA County's Deputy District Attorney there questioning Erik Menendez all morning long. They were hard-hitting, they were peppered questions. They wanted to know, demanding accountability, demanding taking accountability for perceived lies, demanding to know why he went after both his father and his mother if he only feared his father. And then we have this quote here, this from LA County Deputy District Attorney Habib Balian. "When what you have done is shotgun your parents to death, deleted any competing wills, taken their money, spent their money, you're a violent person." Now, parole attorney for Erik Menendez was there, Heidi Rummel. Heidi Rummel, who Mark Garrigo said he had a lot of faith in going into this, was there warning the prosecutors and the deputy district attorney all along that this was not the time to relitigate this case. This was not what this was about here. This is to Heidi Rummel, and this is what Heidi had to say, quote, "Has he been perfect since 2013? No. But he has been remarkable. His journey is inspiring. He was raised in a family where wealth and success masked complete dysfunction." And so we look here that bail has been denied for 3 years. Let us begin with the caveat as we look through this, and all of the reasons why is that we were cautioned by the defense. We were cautioned by the family. We were cautioned by the Deputy District Attorney, Nathan Hochman, that this was going to be a major uphill battle for both the Menendez brothers, starting with Erik today and Lyle tomorrow, to try and get parole the first time out. That was going to have to be achieved with great difficulty. He has failed in his attempt. Denial has been won't be heard again until 3 years' time. Looking at the notes here that we can now report to you, As far as Erik is concerned, when the decision was read, he listened intently, nodding, but clearly, visibly hurt by the decision. Colleen and Michael.
Robert, as we look at this and the statement, a couple of things stand out as well. Barton, who was one of the parole commissioners there, talked about the burglary. Erik was involved in 2 burglaries before they moved to Beverly Hills as a teenager. And he also mentioned the mother. He said he found the execution of Kitty to show him at the time to have been devoid of human compassion. That's a direct quote from the parole commissioner there.
And an indication, Colleen and Michael, that the commissioner really heard the words of the deputy district attorney, because the deputy district attorney focused on that during the parole hearings from the transcripts that we read throughout the day, really focused on that. You said you were afraid of your father. You said that if you didn't kill him, if he walked out of that den, he was going to kill you. Well, if that's the case, why didn't you kill your mother? He said because he was devastated that his mother, Kitty Menendez, was aware of the sexual abuse and did nothing to protect her son. That is Erik's reason for wanting to go after his mother, devastated by it and also fearing that she would want him dead. Also to be considered here, and it's something that we're going to be talking about throughout the night and into tomorrow, they spent a lot of time, guys, talking about the violations in prison. Some of them go so far back. Remember, they've been in prison now for a very long time. Some of them go long ways back. Some of them, involve the conjugal visits with his wife that he shouldn't have had in a certain place. Some of them involved drugs, including heroin. Some of the violations especially involved the cell phone. And Colleen, as we were talking about, the cell phone and the showing what district attorney was highlighting, the deputy DA, this appears to be criminal behavior. You had a cell phone you shouldn't have had, and you hid it by carving out a section of a book in which to hide it. So apparently these violations really did add up, and it's going to play and has played a factor in the decision made today, a 10-hour parole hearing. We only expect it to go on a short period of time. But again, Erik Menendez's first time out facing a parole board after the murders 36 years ago last night on North Elm Drive in Beverly Hills. He has failed in his attempt to walk out of prison. He won't get another chance for at least 3 years.
Robert, we're going to have keep you on standby. We just received this statement here from the family of Erik and Lyle Menendez, and we're quoting here: "While we respect the decision, today's outcome was, of course, disappointing and not what we hoped for, but our belief in Erik remains unwavering, and we know he will take the board's recommendation in stride."
His remorse, growth, and the positive impact he's had on others speak for themselves. We will continue to stand by him and hold the hope that he is able to return home soon.
Tomorrow, we turn our attention to Lyle's hearing, and while it is undoubtedly difficult, we remain cautiously optimistic and hopeful that the commissioner will see in Lyle what so many others have: a man who has taken responsibility, transformed his life, and is ready to come home.
We're going to toss it out to our Hetty Chang. She's with Robert Rand right now, a gentleman who's been following this case really from the very beginning. Hetty, his reaction to this.
Expert on this. He's written the book, The Menendez Brothers. He was the executive producer of the Peacock documentary. Robert, we appreciate you being here for your insight, your unique perspective on all of this, and really your institutional knowledge. So first and foremost, as Colleen said, what is your reaction to the parole board's decision today?
I am personally disappointed. I think that both Erik and Lyle Menendez should be recommended for parole. The parole board obviously disagreed today. I was a member of the media pool, so I was receiving email reports in real time from the pool reporter from the LA Times. And so as I've read through those reports, my general take is that this was really a roller coaster of a day. There were dramatic moments that were in favor of the prosecution. Dramatic moments for the brothers and their family. One of the most dramatic moments that I can see in the pool reports is that Erik Menendez made a statement expressing remorse and apologizing to his family. You know,
are you're disappointed? Are you surprised at the outcome?
I am not surprised at the outcome because traditionally in California and most other states, inmates who appear before a parole board for the first time are turned down for parole. So statistically, I knew in advance that it did not look encouraging, but you never know. You know, as I said, there was dramatic testimony according to the pool reports on both sides of this case, from the DA's office and also from the family members and from Erik Menendez himself. And so I know that what's going to happen is that the defense attorneys are going to pivot immediately to the habeas corpus petition, which is very much alive. And the habeas petition deals with some of the new evidence that was filed in a petition in May of 23, the day after our Peacock documentary, Menendez plus Menudo, Boys Betrayed, came out. And what gets you out of prison after 35 years is hard evidence, not a buzzy TV show.
We had just talked a little while ago about, I asked you how many times you have personally spoken with Erik and Lyle in your nearly 4 decades of covering this story. When was the last time that you spoke with them? And I mean, what was their feeling going into this today and tomorrow?
I believe the brothers were hopeful. Their attorneys were hopeful. They really have a dream team of all kinds of attorneys that specializes.
Today's hearing, as I mentioned, lasted nearly 10 hours.
As for what's ahead now, the parole panel will be explaining its rationale. Erik will have a chance to pursue parole again in 3 years. The panel will also make recommendations to help Erik's case in the future.
Robert Kovacic traveled to the Richard J. Donovan Correctional Facility in San Diego, and Robert is live outside that facility with this decision that came down just before 6 tonight. Robert?
And Colleen, if you are looking just for a brief explanation, the decision, according to the commissioner, said, listen, I believe in redemption or I wouldn't be in this job, but if you are following legal standards, we still believe you pose a considerable risk to society. So this was, as you said, a 10-hour hearing. It was done remotely. Erik Menendez, starting at 8:30 this morning, sat in a room behind me. They tell me it was about 1.5 miles into the prison, where he spoke remotely to those 2 parole commissioners who were based in Los Angeles. A number of relatives were going to speak as well on their behalf. That support system the commissioner would later talk about. But going into this hearing, we had been told with 2 different sets of beliefs. It was their defense attorney, Mark Garagos, that explained to us that this was the story, and what the focus should be is the incredible transformation that Erik and his brother Lyle have made in prison after all of these decades. And the rehabilitation should be the focus. However, LA County District Attorney Nathan Hochman telling me that he believes that the Menendez brothers are not ready to be released. And he said because they have not shown true insight into their crimes, taking responsibility for the crimes themselves and for the lies that Hochman said they told leading up to the murders of their parents on August 20th, 1989, and in the days, the weeks, the months thereafter. We had been privy throughout the day to a transcript that was being done through the pool reporter. We weren't allowed to share it with you, but as we watched sort of what was unfolding there, it was a back and forth of what exactly happened on North Elm Drive in 1989, what drove Erik to kill not only his father, but also his mother. And it was also focused on his rehabilitation inside a prison, including a number of violations that he had here. But let's break down what Erik had to say. And I want to address right now some of his quotes. This is one that he told to the commissioners. I just want my family to understand that I am so unimaginably sorry for what I have put them through from August 20th, 1989 until this day and this hearing. Erik Menendez ended, we believe, his time with the hearing, again, Colleen and Michael, it went 10 hours, by saying this: don't think it's the healing of me, it's the healing of the family. This is a family tragedy. There was a member of the defense who spoke on behalf of Erik Menendez. Heidi Rummel said, and I'm quoting here, "Has he been perfect since 2013? No, but he has been remarkable. His journey is inspiring. He was raised in a family where wealth and success masked complete dysfunction." But throughout the day, Colleen and Michael, it was the deputy DA that continued to hammer Erik about the events that took place in that home on North Elm Drive and about taking responsibility for it, all while we understand District Attorney Nathan Hochman was watching as well. Remember, this was all done remotely. Habib Balian, LA County Deputy DA, said, "When one continues to diminish their responsibility for a crime and continues to make the same false excuses that they've made for 30+ years, one is still that same dangerous person that they were when they shotgunned their parents." And so then it was a matter of the parole commissioners, and a decision was quickly reached, we understand, after 20 members of the Menendez family spoke on behalf of Erik Menendez. The commissioner ended the hearings by saying to Erik, "The truest thing you said in terms of accountability is there no justification for your actions. Doing what you did, when you did, how you did it, there is no justification." He really went after him, Colleen and Michael, when Erik Menendez was asked over and over again by the deputy district attorney, "Yes, you were afraid your father was going to kill you. Yes, you said if he walked out of that den and up to your room, you would be dead if you didn't shoot him first. But why did you shoot your mother?" It was that question that they kept hammering home with Erik Menendez, who replied he was devastated to learn that his mother knew all along about the sexual abuse that took place inside of the home. The commissioner addressed as well the sexual abuse and even said to Erik Menendez, "We understand that victims of sexual abuse are often afraid to leave their perpetrators and they are trapped there." But he said victims of sexual abuse do not gun down their parents. And this was the last thing that the parole commissioner said to Erik Menendez. Keep in mind, he will be eligible for parole in 3 years' time. As we put this quote up for you, this is what he said: "You have two options. One is to have a pity party, and then you become a self-fulfilling prophecy, probably not getting granted next time. Or you can take to heart what we discussed." And so he left it in the hands of Erik Menendez. Up next, it's Lyle's turn. Colleen and Michael.
All right, Robert, thank you for that. We're going to put you on standby. We'll get back to you in just a couple of minutes.
I want to open things up now and bring in our legal analyst, Royal Oaks, and Conan Nolan. Mark Garrigo said the focus should be on the brother's transformation and rehabilitation. The commissioners say Erik Menendez, as they put it, was not a model prisoner here.
I got to tell you, Michael, I would have bet $100 there wouldn't be a Watergate reference in the commissioner's decision, but there kind of was, because he pointed out sometimes the cover-up is worse than the crime. And the criticism of Erik for committing some offenses and then trying to cover them up in prison, that was a big deal. But the other point is, Robert was saying, I mean, the idea of killing your mother. The fact that they were devastated to know that she knew about the abuse and did nothing about it, that is not a self-defense issue. So that doesn't even have the sort of imperfect, half-baked self-defense notion. If you're psychologically damaged because of years of abuse, then you can say, well, I just felt that I had to do this or Dad would kill me. But the mom, and by killing the mom, they got the $15 million estate. I think that was critical in the thinking of the commissioners.
It was interesting when we heard that statement or read that statement today. It almost seemed like Erik Menendez was trying to garner some empathy or sympathy. He said it was a day that forever changed his life. Let me ask you this, Conan. Was there too much expectation going into this? I mean, we've seen, you know, all the specials, the true crime, the media attention.
Yeah.
Nobody expected this to go the way it did.
Well, you didn't expect the wording that we saw coming in. That surprised me because there was tremendous condemnation there. Yeah. And but you're right. I think you're right. Because of the podcasts, the documentaries, the family that's rallied around him. You had a high-profile attorney in Mark Garagos. They thought all the momentum was headed his way, and so this rug pulled right out from under him. And initially, when the district attorney came out strong, and the DA is, you know, the news conference, he gave 2 news conferences at the Hall of Justice, and they were thorough. One lasted for like 40 minutes because he wanted to go over the entire case. And we thought he was out of touch, that there was just so much momentum. But, and Royal, you mentioned it, nobody gets out on their first try. And that's the other thing we should have pointed out, is the fact that what does this say about the parole system if everybody else goes through this system over and over and over again, and then Lyle shows up and boom, you're out. No, I didn't think this was in the cards.
Yeah, and he's not low risk. He was considered, both the brothers considered moderate risk here.
Right, and to the point of what Erik was accused of doing in prison, one can suggest that spoke of his character, the same character that was present at the time of the murders. Rules don't apply to him. They can figure out, they can navigate through life in a way that they have a sort of a special privilege. I don't know if that played a role in all this, but it didn't help him. And I think the parole board intuitively is looking for a change of attitude on the part of somebody who committed a double homicide. And by the way, I should just mention this. We've talked about the sexual assault of the boys, and I understand it. There's a lot of evidence to support that. But the 2 people who could contradict that were murdered that day. They never got a shot saying, you know, trying to defend themselves. I mean, so that should be pointed at some point.
I read the response here from Commissioner Robert Barden, and I gleaned a lot of tough love here. You know, the words are harsh, as they should be. However, there's hope down at the end of the line.
And the silver lining is the board said you can come back in 3 years. They could have said come back in 5, 10, or 15 years. In 3 years, Erik can come back, and in that time, hopefully he will have not offended further, no prison rule violations, and a psychiatrist will say, you know, I've been seeing this guy for 5 or 10 years. He really is a changed man. There's a chance for that to happen.
And no more blaming anybody. That's the other thing.
Right.
You know?
It's like putting him on notice. You know, moving forward, we expect this.
No, exactly right. And of course, you know, you think back to the words of the Menendez brothers. They said, we were shocked we weren't arrested. The Beverly Hills cops showed up. They didn't check for gunpowder residue on us. You know, we had shotgun shells in the back of the car. And, oh, officer, may I get my tennis bag, please? Sure, go ahead. They didn't search the car. So they expected to be caught that night. And then they came up with the idea, oh, I guess it was the mafia that killed our dad.
Yeah, I remember
and then
that.
They had to talk about the abuse.
All right. We're going to bring in Eric Leonard right now. He's standing by in the newsroom. We know the DA's office here in L.A. was given the chance to ask some clarifying questions for Erik Menendez today.
Yeah, Eric, what do we know about his reaction from the DA's office here?
Well, we don't know the reaction yet, and part of that is because the participants, the people who are directly involved in these proceedings, have agreed not to talk publicly while the proceedings are still underway. And of course, we have the Lyle Menendez hearing tomorrow, so we don't have a response from the elected district attorney yet, but I imagine we'll get one at the conclusion of the hearing tomorrow, assuming it happens, because there's always the possibility that inmates can withdraw from a parole hearing and ask to hold it sometime in the future. We certainly don't have any indications that is going to happen, but it is a possibility. So assuming it happens, we reach a conclusion tomorrow. I expect we'll get a response from the elected district attorney at that point. Today we had one of his deputies, Habib Balian, who works out of the Major Crimes Unit, participating in the hearing, which is interesting for a few reasons. One is because it definitely illustrates the significance of the last election for district attorney in Los Angeles. Had this happened a few years ago, under the tenure of the previous district attorney, George Gascon, the hearing might have gone in a completely different way. For one thing, Gascon's office supported the resentencing proceeding that ultimately led to the parole hearing today. Had that happened a couple of years ago, there would have been a prosecutor in the room. One of Gascon's policies was to forbid members of his office from participating in parole hearings like this, meaning the members of the parole board would be relying on records, paper records, summaries of what had happened in the trial, rather than an in-person presentation of the DA's position. Plus, as you alluded to, the opportunity for the deputy DA to question the person asking for parole, in this case, Erik Menendez. There were back and forths that went on today where Deputy DA Balian was trying to get at various issues around the case, so much so that at one point the parole commissioner leading the hearing pushed back and stopped Balian from asking some questions that the parole commissioner thought went into areas that were not relevant to the hearing today. Let's show you one of those where the commissioner stopped Balian, the commissioner was relaying some of these questions. He said, "We're not here to prove premeditation. While I'm giving Mr. Balian leeway, I'm not going to give him much more. We're not here to retry the case." And this had to do with questions, again, that the commissioner thought went outside the scope of the parole hearing, which was focused on whether or not they were suitable for release. The reference in that particular exchange had to do with whether or not the murders were premeditated. The position of the DA's office, of course, is that they were. And the DA's position further along those lines is that that refutes their ability, or it should refute their ability to claim self-defense. Also tied in with that is the DA's position that the brothers have never really come clean about their true motives for the murders. We were talking earlier today about how during those resentencing hearings that led to the judge making the decision that allowed the parole hearing today, the brothers both made statements in court that they were sorry for what they did, something that they hadn't said in quite the emphatic way they did during those hearings. But nonetheless, the DA's office position was they don't really believe the self-defense argument from the brothers, and because there are questions about that, the DA's position was, and has been, and was again today, that they've never really discussed the true motives for what happened. Lastly, the opportunity shouldn't be lost here that the DA had to question Erik Menendez in this forum is really unique, again, because under the predecessor, under Gascon's administration, no DAs participated in parole hearings. It seemed in the decision that was released, many of the issues that the DA had focused on were echoed by the commissioner's rationale, having to do with the horrifying nature of the murder, having to do with the lack of contrition in some ways, and then questions about whether or not they had really reached that point of suitability for release. So it'll be interesting to say what everybody reflects on this after this decision, once we also have this hearing tomorrow, and whether or not the prosecutors will be free to discuss a little bit more about what happened in those hearings and what they thought about the outcome. Back to you guys.
Eric, as you were talking, we just got this statement from DA Nathan Hochman, and so we're going to read it with you, and as the first time. He says he just released this statement that reads in part, "The board correctly determined that Erik Menendez's actions speak louder than words. His conduct in prison and current mentality demonstrates that he still poses an unreasonable risk of danger to the community. Importantly, the board did not bow to public spectacle or pressure, a restraint that upholds the dignity and integrity of the justice system."
Much of what we've heard from the DA all along, right, Eric?
Yeah, that echoes a lot of what came up during those resentencing hearings a few months back. In fact, so much so because the judge at one point during those hearings told the prosecutors who were arguing, in fact, it was DA Hochman himself who appeared in court one time, but the deputy DA who was in the parole hearing today also argued these issues in front of the judge. The judge told the DA's office the things you're arguing about, what Hochman said right there, about the character of the Menendez brothers and whether or not they were suitable for parole, were arguments that the DA should be making at the parole hearing. which is exactly what happened today. And again, reflective in those comments from the parole commissioner in issuing that decision, it seemed like many of the issues the DA's office raised resonated with the commission because they cited them as some of the very reasons they decided against parole for Erik Menendez.
All right, Erik, letter live for us up in the newsroom. If you can stand by. And,
sure
you know, we learned a lot today at the hearing that really stood out about Erik and Lyle's childhood. Some things were new, what happened the night of the murders, and what has happened since here.
At the hearing, in fact, Erik admitted he'd been involved in crimes before the murders. We had heard that the family had moved from Calabasas to Beverly Hills because there were 2 robberies, but he really went into detail about that. And one of the police commissioners, Robert Barton, had issues with the pattern that was developing.
That's right. You have to use a crystal ball to try to figure out if somebody is going to reoffend, to commit violence. The psychologist said there was a moderate level of risk there, and obviously the commissioners agreed. It's interesting that the commissioners, as some judges have in the past, have blasted the DA. Why are you trying to retry the case? I have a feeling that, like many judges who go into a hearing after reading hundreds or thousands of pages, they kind of know how they're going to rule. And I think the commissioners here had a very strong idea before today dawned how they would rule. But when they have the hearing, sometimes they want to beat up on the people who are going to win so they don't look like they're just sort of a hometown guy. So that may have been part of the psychology, but the commissioners clearly knew in their minds there was a very severe risk if they released Erik.
You know, they talk about the burglaries that happened, 2 of them when he was a teenager, one that was actually commissioned with his brother. But the commissioner also talked about the crimes that were being committed while in prison as an adult.
The risky behavior.
The risky behavior you talk about.
Exactly. And when you put those 2 things together, the brothers can say, ignore what happened in '89. Yeah. We're sorry. We were young. We're remorseful. But when you add what they did then to the fact that they broke the rules in prison, I think that was enough for the commissioners to say, we're on board with the shrinks who've examined these guys, and they're worried that they're going to re-offend and commit violent crimes if they're released.
Talk to us a little bit about what happens next. What is this habeas corpus that we keep hearing from attorneys about? Right. Is there another avenue for them to get?
Yeah, so there are 3 avenues for freedom. Number 1 is parole. Number 2 is clemency. The governor will take a parole board's recommendation into account, but the governor is free to say, I'm going to grant clemency. And the 3rd is the new evidence, the Menudo boy band guy who signed a declaration saying the dad molested me, and Erik's letter months before the murders to a cousin saying the dad molested me. Those things are serious factors that are taken into account.
We talk about clemency, Conan?
Yeah, and that's not going to happen. Yeah. You know, again, the governor's more than happy for this to be passed on to the next governor, whoever that may be. I have to tell you, though, that this is a big W for the district attorney. Nathan Hochman, for the longest time, as this was percolating through popular culture and the documentaries and the family coming out in support, he seemed to be the odd man out. I mean, and he was really the lone advocate for them staying in. And if you look at what was said today following this hearing, and Erik pointed out, they pretty much ripped and read from what his argument was when he spelled it out at the Hall of Justice during those 2 long news conferences. So Nathan Hochman, I'm sure, is very happy. And the statement that he had tonight, spectacle, he called it a spectacle. I think, although he wouldn't say it in an interview, he was not happy with how so much of this was tried on podcasts, in the media, this surge of TikTok videos, as well as Instagram, people saying, we're rallying for Lyle and Erik, justice has to be done. I think he was irked by that. I think he's obviously really pleased with what happened here, but it was, for a lot of people, he was the only person out there that sort of predicted what was going to happen.
You know, you call this a W for the DA's office, but it was one that really came with a very long and very hard road, even with Lyle and Erik's family. Said that initial meeting was contentious with the DA, when in fact the Hochman came out and said, no, it wasn't. I spent so many hours with them listening to every single story.
Right, but it was if you measure that meeting with this district attorney with the previous district attorney. And George Gascon was on their camp. You know, absolutely.
And weren't there attorneys who had recommended parole, or that things changed for the Menendez brothers? Didn't they lose their jobs, and weren't they put in other places? I don't want to use the word demoted, but they insist they were.
Right. And there are others.
Reassigned, that's what I'm looking for.
Transferred.
Transferred.
Right. And remember, there were deputy DAs under Jackie Lacey who said they were demoted because they weren't up to speed on the new form of criminal justice reform under George Gascon. So, I just think that if you look at the terminology that he used in that statement, there's a little of a "I told you so." You know, he's doing a bit of a victory lap.
All right, if we can all just stand by here, let's get to Kathy Vara. She's live in our News Operations Center.
Kathy, we're hearing you spoke to the so-called juror number 9 from the very first Menendez trial in the 90s.
Yeah, really interesting. Her name is Hazel Thornton. She was working as a telecommunications employee back in 1993. She was summoned as a juror at that point, and she served on the hung jury. She said it was divided, 6 men, 6 women. Here's what she had to say to us just a few minutes ago.
I was hoping for parole to be granted because I've wanted them out for 30 years, ever since I was a juror on the first trial. I basically believed them. I voted for manslaughter and not murder. And so if they had been convicted of manslaughter 30 years ago, they would have been out like 13 years ago. Well, every bit of vindication for the Menendez brothers is vindication for me because of the way I voted and the way the female jurors were treated back then and still today. Because I was on the jury that was gender split, 6 men and 6 women. And all the women voted for manslaughter and all of the men voted for murder. Yes, I think it's a miracle that they got parole hearings to begin with, because they were sentenced to life without the possibility of parole. And I think that I still believe in miracles and there's room for more. And when the next time they get to do this, they will be successful.
And if you would like to learn more about Hazel Thornton and her experience as a juror on the original Menendez trial, she said you can purchase her book, Hung Jury. It's the diary of a Menendez juror 20 years later. Back to you.
All right, Kathy. Appreciate it. Final thoughts, Royal?
You know, based on Hazel's recollection there.
Thanks.
In the very first trial, the judge allowed manslaughter as an option, and all 12 jurors said guilty, guilty, but they couldn't agree on murder, 1 or 2 voluntary or involuntary manslaughter. Second trial, Judge Stanley Weisberg, also famous from the Rodney King trial, said, no manslaughter, it's just murder, yes or no, and they obviously went for murder. Hot August night tonight, I did a little research. This is 36 years and a day after the killings. 20 years and 10 days prior to the killings was the Manson killings of Sharon Tate, another hot August night. So these high-profile trials in Los Angeles just keep coming.
Yeah, Tex Watson is a prison mate down in San Diego. Speaking of the Manson cases, yeah, I find it pretty astonishing. I think a lot of people were surprised with what happened today. But again, I think the district attorney is certainly satisfied. And it does put in check this notion that popular culture can change the wheels of justice. Manslaughter, I can't imagine manslaughter after that murder. I mean, that's pretty astonishing to hear. And it was always interesting that the women said, you know, manslaughter, we believe them, they were victims. And the men said, they murdered 2 people. This is a story.
We were talking about that earlier today, and I said it does fall down the lines of gender, even if you ask about it now. All right, you guys, thank you. We'll do it again. We will. Now the case turns its focus to Lyle Menendez. The older brother will have his turn in front of the parole board coming up next.
That's right. That hearing tomorrow is set to begin at 8:30 a.m. It is virtual, just like today's. There will be a strict embargo on all information until a recommendation is made. The California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation is prohibiting any video or audio from being shared. Lyle Menendez and his parole attorney will appear from the same correctional facility in San Diego County. Then after making his case, the parole board, which will appear virtually, may release their recommendations.
But we don't know exactly when that will happen. We do thank you for joining us for this special edition of The Case, the Menendez brothers.
Be sure to join us here again tomorrow night. We're streaming live tomorrow at 8 p.m. on our NBC Los Angeles News channel, on Roku, Peacock, and Samsung TV Plus.